In the long and complex story of medieval India, dynasties rose and fell like waves upon a restless sea. Some left faint ripples, soon forgotten by time. Others changed the course of history itself. Among them, one dynasty stands out for its sheer audacity, its ambition, and the shadow of betrayal that defined both its rise and its fall. The Khiljis. Their story is one of courage and cunning, of loyalty turned to treachery, and of rulers who fought not only enemies beyond their borders but also conspiracies within their palaces. To understand the rise of the Khiljis, we must first step back to the twilight of the Mamluk or slave dynasty, the first of the Delhi sultanates. It was a time of uncertainty, of shifting alliances and growing discontent. The Turkish nobles, who had once served as loyal slaves of Kutbuddin Aybak and Iltutmish, now held vast estates, private armies, and enormous influence. The empire, though rich, had begun to fracture under their competing ambitions. Into this chaos emerged a family of Turkic-Afghan origin, the Khiljis. They were not pure Turks, and the Turkish elite looked down upon them as outsiders. Yet they were ambitious, capable, and fiercely determined to claim the power they believed was rightfully theirs. For decades, the Khiljis had served as soldiers under the Mamluks, biding their time. They were skilled horsemen and seasoned commanders, especially in the regions of Bengal and Bihar. But beneath their loyalty simmered resentment. Resentment toward the Turkish aristocracy that monopolized the highest offices and treated the Khiljis as lesser men. That quiet resentment would one day ignite into a revolution that would shake the very foundations of the Delhi Sultanate. The spark came in the late 13th century after the death of Sultan Balban, the last great ruler of the slave dynasty. Balban was a man of discipline, a ruler who believed in strict control. But after his death, his successors were weak, indulgent, and easily swayed by courtiers. The empire began to crumble under corruption and internal rivalries. Mongol invasions grew more frequent, the provinces more rebellious, and Delhi, once a symbol of imperial strength, became vulnerable. It was during this atmosphere of weakness that a man named Jalaluddin Khilji rose to prominence. He was no young conqueror hungry for blood and glory. He was in his 70s, gentle by nature and respected for his wisdom. Yet he carried the fire of ambition in his heart. As an experienced general and governor, he had watched the Mamluk dynasty decay, and he knew that the time had come for a new power to take its place. In 1290 CE, after a palace coup and a wave of political intrigue, Jalaluddin Khilji ascended the throne, marking the beginning of the Khilji dynasty, the second great empire of the Delhi Sultanate. His rise was not greeted with open arms. The Turkish nobles scorned him for his Afghan blood. They called him an upstart, an intruder, a man unfit to sit on the throne of Delhi. But Jalaluddin was patient. He believed in ruling with kindness and reconciliation. He sought to heal wounds rather than deepen them. He released prisoners taken by previous rulers, reduced harsh taxes, and tried to win the hearts of his people. Under his rule, Delhi experienced a brief period of peace and stability. But as history would soon reveal, mercy can be a dangerous luxury in an age of ambition. Among those who served him was a young and talented commander, Alauddin Khilji, his nephew and son-in-law. Alauddin was everything Jalaluddin was not. He was bold, daring, and restless. He dreamed of glory, not contentment. To him, his uncle's kindness was weakness, and his mercy a threat to royal authority. Alauddin had risen quickly through the ranks because of his military brilliance. Jalaluddin trusted him deeply and appointed him governor of Kara, near modern-day Allahabad. It was in Kara that Alauddin began to craft his own destiny. Reports soon reached him of the immense wealth of the Deccan, especially the kingdom of Devagiri, ruled by the Yadava king Ramachandra. The city was said to overflow with gold, jewels, and treasures beyond imagination. Without informing the Sultan, Alauddin planned a secret raid. In 1293 CE, he led a swift and daring expedition to Devagiri. His army moved with such speed and precision that the Yadava king was caught completely off guard. Within weeks, the city was sacked, and Alauddin returned with unimaginable riches: gold, silver, pearls, and precious stones. When news of his success reached Delhi, the capital erupted in astonishment. Never before had a single commander brought such wealth to the Sultanate. Jalaluddin, though surprised, was proud of his nephew's achievement. But little did he know that Alauddin's ambition had already outgrown his loyalty. The riches of Devagiri were not just gold. They were a weapon, a stepping stone toward the throne of Delhi. Alauddin used the wealth to build his army, strengthen his position, and win over key nobles. He sent word to Jalaluddin that he had returned with treasures and wished to present them personally. Overjoyed, the old sultan rode out to meet his beloved nephew at Kara, trusting him completely. What happened next would forever stain the history of the Khiljis with the shadow of betrayal. As the two met on the riverbank, Jalaluddin dismounted his horse to embrace Alauddin. In that tender moment of affection, Alauddin drew his sword and struck the old sultan down. The gentle ruler who had trusted love over fear fell by the hand of his own kin. Jalaluddin's head was raised as a trophy, and Alauddin proclaimed himself sultan. It was an act of ruthless ambition, shocking, cold, and unforgettable. With this single act of treachery, the character of the Khilji dynasty changed forever. Mercy was replaced by strength, trust by fear, and idealism by power. Alauddin marched toward Delhi with his army, faced little resistance, and entered the capital as the new sultan in 1296 CE. He understood the weight of what he had done. His throne was soaked in blood, and his legitimacy questioned. The nobles murmured, the people whispered, and the Mongols watched. Alauddin knew that only absolute authority could secure his rule. From that moment, his reign became a mission: to build a kingdom so strong that no one would ever dare betray him as he had betrayed his uncle. Alauddin's first years as sultan were filled with military campaigns and internal reforms. He expanded his empire in all directions, conquering Gujarat, Ranthambore, Chittor, and eventually reaching the southern kingdoms of the Deccan. His armies returned from every campaign laden with spoils, but he was more than a conqueror. He was a strategist who understood the importance of order and discipline. He crushed revolts with brutal efficiency and reorganized the administration with precision. His economic policies, his control of markets, and his reforms in revenue and military organization turned Delhi into the most powerful state in medieval India. Under Alauddin, the Khilji Empire reached its zenith, rich, disciplined, and secure. But beneath this greatness, the same shadow that had brought him to power still lingered: the shadow of betrayal. Alauddin trusted no one completely. He surrounded himself with spies and secret informers. Every noble, every soldier, every merchant was watched. Even his own family was not free from suspicion. The memory of Jalaluddin's trusting eyes haunted him, and he vowed never to make the same mistake again. In his later years, Alauddin's health began to decline, and with it, his paranoia grew. He turned increasingly isolated, relying heavily on his slave general, Malik Kafur, a brilliant but cunning man who would soon become the power behind the throne. Malik Kafur had been brought to Delhi as a captured slave from Gujarat, but had risen quickly through the ranks due to his intelligence and loyalty, or at least the appearance of it. He led Alauddin's southern campaigns with great success, bringing immense wealth from Warangal, Madurai, and Dwarasamudra. But as Alauddin weakened, Malik Kafur's influence deepened. He began to manipulate the Sultan's trust, turning him against his own sons and advisors. The palace became a nest of intrigue. Ministers whispered in corridors, guards changed allegiance, and every eye watched the other with suspicion. In 1316 CE, Alauddin Khilji died. Some say naturally, others whisper through slow poisoning. Whatever the truth, his death marked the beginning of the Khilji dynasty's unraveling. Malik Kafur, ever ambitious, immediately seized control of the royal palace. He placed the young prince Shihabuddin on the throne as a puppet ruler and declared himself regent. But his grasp on power was short-lived. The nobles, long humiliated under Alauddin's strict rule, now saw their chance. Within a few months, Malik Kafur was assassinated and the palace descended into chaos. One of Alauddin's sons, Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah, emerged as the next ruler. At first, he promised a new era of freedom and joy. He reversed many of his father's harsh policies, freed prisoners, and allowed luxury and entertainment back into court life. But his reign soon degenerated into excess and indulgence. The strict discipline of Alauddin's rule dissolved into decadence. The once mighty empire that had stretched from the Himalayas to the southern seas began to lose its strength. Amid this weakening state, betrayal struck once again from within the palace walls. Mubarak Shah had a trusted officer named Khusrau Khan, a man of Hindu origin who had converted to Islam and risen rapidly under the Sultan's patronage. Mubarak trusted him completely, treating him almost like a brother. But as history often repeats itself, trust once more became the prelude to treachery. In 1320 CE, Khusrau Khan turned on his master. With the help of his followers, he assassinated Mubarak Shah in the palace and seized the throne for himself. The Khilji dynasty, built on ambition and betrayal, now fell by the same weapons that had brought it to power. But the story did not end there. The nobles of Delhi, disgusted by Khusrau Khan's actions, rallied behind a powerful Turkish noble, Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. Within months, Ghiyasuddin marched into Delhi, defeated Khusrau Khan, and founded the Tughlaq dynasty. Thus, the Khilji dynasty came to a bloody and dramatic end, a rise and fall shaped by courage, ambition, and the poison of betrayal. Looking back, the Khiljis' story feels almost Shakespearean, a tale of loyalty and deceit, of greatness born from greed. Jalaluddin, the kind old man who dreamed of peace, was murdered by the nephew he loved most. Alauddin, the brilliant conqueror who built an empire, spent his final days haunted by distrust. Malik Kafur, the clever slave who rose to power, fell victim to the same ambition that had lifted him. And Mubarak Shah, the prince who wanted joy, died at the hands of his closest friend. Every act of trust in this dynasty ended in treachery. Every alliance ended in betrayal. And yet their legacy remains immense. They expanded the frontiers of the Delhi Sultanate farther than ever before. They brought administrative reform, economic stability, and military efficiency. They transformed Delhi into a true imperial capital, a city of wealth, culture, and authority. For nearly 30 years, they dominated the Indian subcontinent through sheer strength of will. But behind that strength lay fragility. The same ambition that fueled their rise also destroyed them. The thirst for power left no room for loyalty, no space for forgiveness. The Khiljis remind us that empires built on betrayal may burn brightly for a moment, but they cannot endure forever. Perhaps that is the true tragedy of their story, that greatness and destruction walked hand in hand. The Khiljis dreamed of glory and achieved it, but at the cost of trust, love, and peace. Their history reads like a mirror to human nature itself. Brilliant and brutal, courageous and corrupt, noble and deceitful, all at once. So when we think of the Khiljis today, we must ask ourselves, what does ambition truly cost? Can power ever be separated from betrayal? Is greatness worth achieving if it demands the sacrifice of trust? And if loyalty itself becomes a weapon, what remains of honor in the game of kings? Was Jalaluddin's mercy a mistake, or was Alauddin's ruthlessness the only way to survive? Could their dynasty have endured if ambition had been tempered by conscience? Or was betrayal always their destiny, written in the very blood that crowned them? The rise of the Khiljis was not just a chapter in history, it was a lesson whispered across the centuries, reminding us that in the endless dance between power and loyalty, ambition always exacts its price.